Do you remember award ceremonies back in high school? You know, they often had some fun categories like who's most likely to become a professional athlete, or who's most likely to become a supermodel, or most likely to become a multimillionaire. Well, in the spirit of those award ceremonies, I'd like to present to you a much more serious and dubious award of who is most likely to die on a motorcycle. You know, I'll present 5 riders who, by their own choices or riding habits, make the distinction of being on this list. So, just like in high school, you didn't want to be the guy your classmates voted most likely to end up in prison, you don't want to end up on this list either. If you find yourself in these top 5, you might want to rethink a little more about your riding habits and decisions. So we'll start at the bottom of the list and we'll work our way up to number 1. The first rider we'll mention is a newcomer to the party of riding a motorcycle, and this is the inexperienced rider who picks for their first motorcycle a large and or powerful motorcycle. You know, there are several reasons why this rider makes the list. They've chosen a motorcycle that's probably much more powerful on a power to weight ratio than any vehicle they've ever experienced. The throttle's very responsive. A larger motorcycle requires more skill and technique to start, stop, and ride. And once a rider gains a little confidence but still lacks the needed skill, they can quickly get over their head and end up making the newspaper. The math is simple. Add a rider who is still deficient in skills to a motorcycle that is the most powerful vehicle the new rider has ever handled, and you've got an ambulance ride waiting to happen. If you don't want to be this guy, start with a smaller motorcycle and build your skills from there. All the skills you develop on a smaller motorcycle will translate to the larger motorcycle and will hone your skills for the street. If in watching this video you find yourself already in this position, so you're a new rider and you've got a large and or powerful motorcycle, and getting a smaller motorcycle is not an option, my advice to you is wear all your protective gear, add some drop protection to your motorcycle because you're very likely to drop it, and then train a lot. Take several classes. Buy a copy of the field guide and practice on an empty parking lot. Become a member of MCrider and ask a lot of questions on the forums. You'll still be at higher risk than other riders who start on a smaller motorcycle, but at least with training and practice you can mitigate some of that risk. But it's still going to take you longer to become proficient on a larger motorcycle than it would be on a smaller one. As a new rider, you don't know what you don't know, and it helps to have a community of riders who are willing to help. There are experienced riders and rider coaches from all over the world who are active members of the MCrider forums with the sole purpose of not only developing their own skills, but helping you develop your skills as well. So MCrider offers 2 great tools to help: the forums and the field guide that you get immediate access through membership, or you can order a printed version of the field guide that will help you develop and train your skills out on the empty parking lot. The next rider coming in at number 4 on our list, we talked about some in last week's video, and this is the rider who is a tailgater. You know, it's simple. Time and space is your best friend on a motorcycle. That's why it's much more dangerous to ride a motorcycle in the city than it is in the country, because there are fewer interactions between cars and motorcycles in the country. You've got a lot of space. As soon as cars and motorcycles start riding in close proximity, there's potential for a collision. The closer that proximity, the higher the potential. We do ourselves no favors when we ride on the bumper of the car or truck in front of us. Not only do we reduce our sight line, we reduce our visibility to the other cars around us, we reduce the time that we've got to adjust to changes in traffic patterns, and most of all, we allow the mistakes of other drivers on the road to become our emergency. If you want to solve this issue for yourself, maintain a good following distance, 2, maybe 3 seconds under ideal conditions, and look far enough up the road to make adjustments to your speed, lane position, and lane selection so that you can make adjustments on the road rather than life-saving reactions. Coming in at number 3, the next rider who makes our list as most likely to die on a motorcycle is the habitual speeder. You know, speeding kind of goes hand in hand with giving yourself time and space on a motorcycle. If an emergency happens in front of you on a motorcycle, there are 2 factors that could save your life: reaction time and stopping distance. Reaction times is fairly consistent, so once a rider processes the danger and begins to apply the brakes, there's about a 1 second in elapsed time that takes place. At only 30 miles per hour, a rider travels 44 feet in that 1 second. At 50 miles per hour, 73.3 feet. At 70 miles per hour, 102.7 feet. And at 90 miles per hour, the rider is traveling at 132 feet per second. That's almost half of a football field. I would bet some riders are barely looking 132 feet in front of them up the road when they ride. But reaction time is just the start of the problem. The faster you're going, the further your stopping distance will be as well. The average stopping distance is going to vary widely. A motorcycle traveling at 30 miles per hour, a lot of things go into that equation, like the rider's skill, their attention to the road conditions, the maintenance of the motorcycle. However, a general estimate can be given considering both the reaction distance and the braking distance. So reaction distance, remember at 30 miles per hour, you're traveling 44 feet per second. Assuming that the typical reaction time is 1 second, you would travel about 44 feet before you even begin starting to brake. So braking distance, the braking distance at 30 miles per hour under good conditions, so a dry road, well-maintained bike, attentive rider, is going to be roughly estimated using a formula for braking distance, which in simple terms can be about 1.5 times the speed when measured in feet per second. So at 30 miles per hour, this would be approximately 66 feet. So our estimate in stopping distance at 30 miles per hour would look like this. It'd be total stopping distance equals 44 feet. That's our reaction time, plus 66 feet. That's our actual braking time, for a total of stopping distance of 110 feet. When you increase the speed to 90 miles per hour, our formula looks quite different. Total stopping distance equals 132 feet of reaction time plus 594 feet of braking equals 726 feet in total stopping distance. The drastic increase in the stopping distance is because the physics states that the stopping force required increases with the square of the speed. So in layman's terms, you can't simply double the braking distance if you double the speed. If you're going faster, it's going to take you even longer to get that same motorcycle with the same rider under the same conditions to a stop. So speeding or riding excessively faster than the traffic around you is a surefire way to make it high up on our list. Coming at number 2 at our list is the rider who rides without a helmet. Every time I mention helmets, I get people commenting it should be up to me if I want to wear a helmet or not. And I agree, the choice should be up to you. But as a professional instructor, it's my job to be honest with you and give you some facts on why that's such a poor choice and why not wearing a helmet puts you at number 2 on this list of riders most likely to die on a motorcycle. So here are some facts. Motorcycle helmets are about 37% effective in preventing motorcycle deaths. They're about 67% effective in preventing brain injuries. The NHTSA estimates that helmets saved the lives of 1,872 motorcyclists in a recent year, and that 749 more could have been saved if they had simply worn a motorcycle helmet. One common argument that I hear from people who don't want to wear a helmet is that they would rather die on a motorcycle than to live in a vegetative state and put that burden on their family. Well, I don't understand that argument at all. It's like you believe that the only 2 possible outcomes from a motorcycle crash are vegetative state or death. How about 2 riders that crash at less than 30 miles per hour, which is a large percentage of crashes? Both riders hit their head on the pavement, which is a very likely outcome. One rider's wearing a helmet and he walks away unharmed or with minor abrasions. The rider without a helmet suffers a serious, life-changing brain injury or is killed as a result. In my opinion, there is no argument that justifies not wearing a helmet. I'd rather the rider be honest and just say, I don't want to wear a helmet, or the freedom I feel without a helmet is worth the risk of dying on a motorcycle. At least these are honest answers and not based on a false argument like the vegetative state argument, or the rumor that wearing a helmet is going to break your neck, or that wearing a helmet limits your visibility, or any of the other nonsense arguments trying to justify the choice of not wearing a helmet as some noble or smart thing to do. In the end, I agree with you. It's still your choice whether or not to wear a helmet, and it's still my job to inform riders of the facts. You may say you know all the facts and you still don't want to wear a helmet. Okay, then I'm not talking to you right now. I'm talking to all of the other riders that you have some influence over who believe there is some validity to the false arguments that I hear many of you making. Our last rider on this list, in my opinion, is the valedictorian of all the riders who are on this most likely to die on a motorcycle list, and this is the rider who rides impaired. Whether it's drugs like marijuana or alcohol, riding impaired is one of the dumbest things you could do on a motorcycle. So here are some statistics. According to the NHTSA, about 27% of motorcyclists killed in fatal crashes in 2019 were riding under the influence of alcohol. This percentage was higher than for drivers of any other type of motor vehicle. Motorcyclists have a problem with drugs and alcohol and getting on their bike and riding. In the same year, 37% of motorcyclists killed in single vehicle crashes at night were alcohol impaired. Among these riders, a significant proportion had BAC levels at or above 0.08%, which is the legal limit for driving under the influence in most jurisdictions. But riding under the influence is not only a poor personal decision, it's also a very selfish decision because your riding affects everyone else out on the road. I was leaving from a camping trip with my family one weekend. We had camped all weekend and we had packed up and were on our way home. We entered into a small Texas town with a single stoplight. A rider turned his motorcycle in front of my truck. We pulled up to that stoplight and he fell over right in front of my truck at the stoplight. I knew right away from the way this rider was riding that he was impaired. So he was laying on his side on the pavement with the motorcycle stuck on top of him. I got out of my truck and got the motorcycle off of him. I pulled the keys from the ignition on his motorcycle and stuck them in my pocket. This rider was so impaired that he could barely stand up. The stoplight where he fell over at was leading to the highway. The rider was wearing jeans, tennis shoes, a t-shirt, and no helmet. As we were talking and he was stumbling around looking for the keys of his motorcycle that had mysteriously disappeared, a man pulled up in a truck and he knew our fellow rider. The man in the truck offered to let the guy ride with him to Austin and back because he was getting ready to go on the trip so that he would have a chance to sober up, but our rider wasn't going to leave his motorcycle behind because he felt like it wouldn't be safe. So I rode his motorcycle to a gas station that our rider was familiar with. I handed the keys to the truck driver and off they went to Austin. I'm fully convinced that that man's life would have very likely ended that day had he continued riding that motorcycle, and especially if he had made his way to that 2-lane highway. This all happened on a Sunday afternoon at around 1 p.m. Not riding under the influence is a choice that you have to make before you start drinking. This rider I just mentioned had a much more serious problem with alcohol than many riders do, but for some reason many riders think it's okay to ride to a bar or have a few drinks and then ride home. But if you do, you moved yourself right to the front of this list in doing so. Riding a motorcycle alone increases our risk on the road. But being an inexperienced rider on a powerful motorcycle, riding too close to the cars in front of you, speeding or traveling at a much higher rate of speed than the traffic around you, not wearing a helmet, and riding impaired will move you right to the front of the class of the riders most likely to die on a motorcycle. Till next week, guys, this is Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road. There's a whole lot more to MCrider than just the weekly videos. Go to mcrider.com/member. You'll get instant access to the forums and the field guide. You get ad-free MCrider videos and a whole lot more. Go to mcrider.com/member for all the details.